First and foremost, if nobody's wished you a happy Columbus Day yet, let me be the first to wish you a happy Columbus Day. And that's right. On this show, on this live stream, it's Columbus Day. More on that in a minute. Welcome to it, everybody. We also have an incredible SpaceX achievement to talk about over the weekend. With all the stuff going on in the world and all the contentious stuff and all the supposed divide and all this other crap, something incredible happened from SpaceX under the direction of Elon Musk over the weekend. Big story over the weekend, obviously, though, was, do we have a third attempted assassination attempt on President Trump's life? Or do we? Can't blame the sheriff's office on this, but the guy says he's a Trump supporter. Try to dig into that a little bit. I have a lot of questions on that. I'm sure you do too. And how do the people who didn't want J.D. Vance to be the vice presidential pick feel today after some of the interviews and the absolute schooling he's delivered to a lot of these media hacks? How do they feel about this? We've got a lot to cover. Hope you had an awesome weekend, by the way. It's Monday, October 14th. Like I said, Columbus Day. More on that in a minute. This was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And I don't think you even have to be a space geek to be into this kind of stuff. So from Boca Chica, Texas, or Starbase, or whatever he calls it now, Elon Musk and SpaceX, the team, launched Starship, as they've done before, on the super heavy booster rocket. Now, that on its own is pretty incredible, what they've been able to do, right? Reusable rockets, reusable ship, we know that much. That wasn't the most incredible part of the whole thing. They returned the booster rocket, but it was caught by what they call the chopsticks on the landing pad of the launch mechanism. It was absolutely incredible. And there looked to be several thousand people on the ground watching this happen, but also in the booth as well. This was just a monumental achievement of what can be done.
This is absolutely insane. On the first ever attempt, we have successfully caught the Super Heavy booster back at the launch tower. What an incredible view.
Listen to those people.
Are you kidding me?
By the way, this was their first attempt at trying to do this. Now, you've probably seen the video. We've talked about it a lot, too, where the booster rockets will land on the floating platform in the sea. This one came back to a pinpoint perfect spot where it was grabbed right from where it launched off from. Oh, and by the way, the Starship itself, the thing it launched into orbit, landed safely, by design, splashed down in the Indian Ocean. It's absolutely incredible. It was 3 years ago. He did an interview about this where most of the world, most of us normal people heard about Elon talking about this. But back in 2011 was the first time he ever announced it publicly to anybody, and this was to the National Press Club. It was only 2011 he said this, and there were literally people in the room looking at him like he was insane. I mean, he might have thought himself he was insane.
And I think SpaceX is going to try to do it. Now, we could fail. I'm not saying we're certain of success here, but we're going to try to do it.
How about that for a philosophy, first of all? Isn't that the takeaway? We might fail, but I think I have a pretty good idea, so I'm going to do it anyway, and we'll see what happens. And he had the means, he had the brains, and he had the vision to be able to do it, and the guts to be able to do it. And all of this, and yet all they've ever done is to try to stop the guy. So he's had trouble after trouble for, like, permitting and to try to get, the FAA to try to let them launch these things. I mean, look at the roadblocks they put in the guy's way. Remember Biden a couple of years ago had the big press conference of all the electric vehicle makers. He had GM there and he had Ford there and all the plan, and yet didn't invite the company in Tesla that has led the way with electric vehicles, and yet they were pushing this thing. They've tried to stop this guy from the get-go. Even before he bought Twitter and turned it into X, which we're on right now, and promote it in the name of humanity because he thinks it's incredibly important for free speech. The guy has guts, and he's got vision, and whether or not you like him personally, thank God he's on the good side of humanity. Can you imagine if he was like a supervillain? That would be horrifying. That would be the worst heel turn of all time if Elon turned out to be a bad guy and turned all of his guts and vision and technology against humanity. But he's not, and I think that's clear right now he's not. Unbelievable. What a thing. What a philosophy. And what a motivating concept that is. We may fail. It's a big risk, but we're going to try anyway. Because even if we do fall a little bit short of our goals, we're still going to wind up with something awesome. But he didn't fail there. As we was talking about with returning a super heavy rocket, succeeded. And the next step is going to... Unbelievable. That's just incredible. All right, let's get to the big story over the weekend. Wanted to get the good side of humanity out of the way first. But then, well, Trump went to Coachella over the weekend, California. That was awesome. That's not bad. That was incredible. Crowd of what's estimated at like 50,000? Along with New York, that's another thing he wanted. And a lot of us had clamored for a Trump rally in California. What better place to go to than Coachella? I mean, where they have the famous concerts, massive area, big crowd, successful speech. He loved it. He does the Trump dance. I think he was more energized coming off the stage on that one than ever before. But, of course, the takeaway is who was arrested at this thing. Couple of rally goers, obviously, in a crowd of 50,000. That's just going to happen. But also this guy. This is where we met Vern Miller. Okay, now this guy arrested for having, I guess he's 49 years old. He's a Las Vegas resident. He's arrested for having, according to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, multiple passports and weapons in his car. He was released, and here's the first weird part, on $5,000 bail. Really? Just if he's that much of a $5,000? That's it? All right, well, maybe that's one thing. And then it got really weird throughout the afternoon yesterday where most of this news came out because Vern, as it turns out, according to people who are very close to him, is a massive Trump supporter, supposedly. In fact, he had been to, according to the New York Post, and we'll read from their story and their reporting on it in just a second here, and other outlets too. 4 Trump rallies he's been to. I guess you'd have to include Coachella in one of those. He also went to the RNC, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee this past summer. And he's a podcast guy. Interesting. And he thinks he's had threats to his life. That's why he had the weapons. Anyway, he was at the RNC, and this is what it sounded like when he was there.
The Republican National Convention behind me. Wonderful people, wonderful time. Just not happy that it's all cashless.
He's walking around, he's meeting people, he's taking meet and greets, tried to talk to a couple of different people. In that same video, in his clip that he took on his phone, he was there with Don Jr., Dr. Jordan Peterson, Vivek was there, Newt Gingrich, RFK Jr., very, very, very close access because apparently he's got some friends. I think Mindy Robinson is a conservative voice, a pretty close friend of his. But then it gets really interesting because now he's speaking out. No audio here, but he said and he spoke to, I guess, Fox News Digital on this, and I'm reading for the New York Post as we speak, said he bought the firearms because of death threats since launching his own podcast where he talks about this kind of stuff and apparently does a lot of video. Says he's a 100% Trump supporter. Interesting. The quote is, "I always travel around with my firearms in the back of my truck while at the same time insisting he'd never use them and has never used them." His quote is, "I've literally never shot a gun in my life. I don't know anything about guns. I'm beyond a novice," end quote. He also says he was found at the checkpoint with a cache of fake passports. He says that's completely, totally not true, which gets to a really interesting thing because the sheriff's department out there is saying something completely different. He says it's a nonsensical statement. But the sheriff's department, if they find a guy with allegedly a bunch of different passports and weapons in his trunk at a rally like that, the other side of this is, and two things can be true, they have to do what they have to do. Here's the Riverside Sheriff.
There's absolutely no way that any of us are going to truly know what was in his head. I can tell you that none of the other probably 50,000 people that showed up yesterday for that event brought multiple passports with different names and guns.
And again, if you're just joining us, $5,000 bail. If this guy was the threat that they claim he is, and I don't know for sure, I just have a lot of questions like you do, you don't release him on $5,000 bail because he's out and, again, making these statements, which include this. There's another quote from him to Fox News Digital. "They're saying I'm part of these right-wing anti-government groups. Why aren't they naming these groups? Because it doesn't exist." He arrested on the gun charges, not the passport things, but that's why he was arrested. Boy, I don't know. This is. I can't blame the Riverside County Sheriff's Department though, because like the guy said, there were 50,000 people at this rally. Nobody else had a trunk load of guns. Well, according to them, we'll see what it turns out to be. So I can't really blame them for doing their jobs. And just on the human level, if you don't want to get arrested, don't show up with a bunch of guns in the trunk that, according to you, you weren't planning to use anyway. It's just a very strange story all the way around. I think it's worth, I mean, we can all ask a conspiracy theory question, too. Did they kind of like arrest this guy to make it look like all Trump supporters are crazy? Is that part of it? They've done that before. I don't know. I mean, they could have. Very interesting to see what happens with that. And I don't know what, if anything's going to happen with that. I'd like to see an interview with this guy, though. I really would. Vern Miller. I will say this, had a lot of close access to a lot of important people. Speaking of important people, where are the people? Where are they? Where is everybody? And there was a lot of pushback to make J.D. Vance the VP pick. Where are you? Where is everybody? Is anybody saying that now? If you followed the and he's so good at this. If you followed the media interviews he's done, and he has done a ton of them, all the stupid Sunday talk shows, he's gone on podcasts, he himself has done a bunch of rallies, and maybe the best of all, the debate, of course, maybe the best job of all he's done happened this Sunday. You know, the ridiculous, horrific Sunday talk shows on the mainstream networks. You know, they got Meet the Depressed, Deface the Nation, as Rush used to call it. Well, ABC News this week is theirs with Martha Raddatz. The story here, I think, is her question, her line of questioning, and how he handles it. He handles it like I think most of us would like to handle it, where he's just outraged at the question, but then just levels her with facts. And what she was asking about, she tried a gotcha question about the, first of all, Aurora, Colorado. That was another Trump rally, by the way. The Aurora, Colorado story, and other communities as well, where apartment complexes have been taken over by Venezuelan gangs. But she tried to turn this around and tried to paint it as a not really that big of a story. Well, he wasn't having it. And this is long, but you got to hear the complete question, and you have to hear a lot of his response.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes,
Yeah.
and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again.
Do you ever have the same reaction I do about like what the post-production meeting is like for people like Martha Raddatz? Like, are they even, I truly wonder this. Is she even aware that she got totally schooled there? I think they are. I think so. But the second part of this is I don't think they care, because probably the producers and floor directors on that show are saying, good. Yeah. You got the question out. Because what we're going to do, we're going to splice that up and we'll just get your question out there and get it out. He's actually trying to make the point that it's just a couple of instances. It's so what that Venezuelan gangs took over these apartment complexes. So what? The mayor himself, who's a Democrat, by the way, the mayor himself said that it's really no big deal, and he shot that down immediately and did it calmly with the facts, and he got to the main point where it shouldn't happen in any community whatsoever. None of them. But it'll be spun around, and they'll, make the point where, it's okay. Yeah, that's okay. This is interesting, though. So that's she pointed to the mayor of Aurora. Apparently, there was just a couple of incidences. So okay, ready. Amazingly, there's something called CBZ Management. CBZ Management. They have an X account, on X/Twitter. I don't know why. No, what are they? An apartment management company in Aurora, Colorado, throughout Colorado and in New York. Yeah, you're thinking the right thing. they manage one of these apartment complexes that got taken over by the Venezuelan gangs. And they actually made a statement about it, okay? So this isn't the mayor of Aurora, Colorado covering up for them, covering up for the crime problem in his city, which is exactly what he's doing. This is the management company of one of the apartment complexes. Here's their statement. This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. CBZ Management. Gangs have taken over several of our properties in Aurora, Colorado. In an attempt to discredit this fact for political purposes and avoid governmental accountability, some have spread false information about our situation. Let's set the record straight. And then, they didn't just write it. CBZ Management Company put together a loop of media outlets just like Martha Raddatz on ABC trying to downplay the situation. This is the actual company that runs these apartment complexes. No one would know better than them that Venezuelan gangs have taken over several of them, according to them. Absolutely amazing. Thank God. You know what? And again, I started this little segment off by saying, where are the people that didn't want J.D. Vance on this ticket? I don't get it. Are you still there? I don't get it at all. Thank God. I think he's even better at the media stuff than Trump thought he was. And it made me ask a serious question. I've seen and I've heard other people ask it too. Honestly, truly. How many people you think are voting for Trump because they're more excited about a J.D. Vance presidency down the road? Honest to God, and I truly mean that. It's not the majority of Trump voters, but you can't tell me there's at least not a small portion of Trump supporters that are like, well, you know, okay, yeah, we need Trump right now, but if he gets in, if we get 8 years after that of J.D. Vance, like setting the record straight, a smart guy, a tough guy who's right from the heartland, I'm thinking more and more about the appeal of J.D. Vance on this ticket because that was a schooling. And he is on a streak of this stuff. He's not afraid of anybody. There was also a New York Times interview over the weekend that they posted on there. I think it was actually one of their podcasts or something like this, where she just tried to get him once again on election deniability. Will you accept the election result? Was 2020 stolen? And he's not having it. He won't fall for the trap, and he makes the point succinctly and directly every single time. Trump's best weapon is himself, obviously, because he's so good in front of people, you know, in the policy, and he's tough. His second best weapon in this and going forward is turning out to be J.D. Vance. I don't know where you anti-Vance people are, or any left, because that guy is turning out to be absolutely incredible. Wow. Holy cow. Honestly, I think he's surprising Trump how good he is. That's why they have him doing so much media. Trump does the rallies, J.D. Vance does the media, and it's working out perfectly. Hey, by the way, a little side note as well, because you're seeing this more and more. If you've paid attention to this, and I know it gets overwhelming and you get sick of it and you're just trying to live a life like we all are, from last week on, you're seeing more and more of these media outlets. Martha Raddatz did it too. New York Times did it too. They're starting to say, well, we'll see. We can't be sure of the election results. They're already coming out and they're saying, Pennsylvania, possibly some other states may not even have their election results in. They're setting the stage. They're ready for a lot. They've seen those internal numbers for Kamala. They've seen them. And they're setting the stage for their own election deniability. They're priming it right now, and you're seeing it more and more. Watch how many times they say it this week in the news outlets. All right, let's get out of politics. Let's get out of the swamp into a swamp of a different kind. The swamp that was the United States of America before it was the United States of America. We said it in when we opened up the live stream today. Happy Columbus Day, everybody. And that's right. It's Columbus Day. For one, for all. I know. It's a federal holiday. So in 1934, it was made a federal holiday. Actually a national holiday, and then was called a federal holiday. So that means, like for everybody, schools are closed, post office closed, banks are closed, most of them, except for maybe some online stuff. Non-essential government offices are closed. That's most of them, by the way, as we learned. So you got the day. It's also a massively important day for the Italian-American community, which is what I'm getting to. If you grew up in an area like I did, just outside of Boston, or Chicago, or L.A., or New York especially, or some other big Midwestern cities, some big southern cities as well, there are huge Columbus Day parades going on today. And those will never, ever stop, and they'll never stop calling them Columbus Day. And I say good. This is Columbus Day. I know the effort is underway to call it Indigenous Peoples Day, and I understand that. But what they don't understand is, by doing that, you're taking a huge part of Italian-American heritage, people that built this country with their hands, part of the people that helped do this thing, and you're taking that away from them. Why should you do this? I understand the argument, and I totally get that. Well, it's the plunder and the disease he brought to the United States, and he killed people and put them in chains. I understand that. I also understand this. It was how business was done back in the day. It doesn't make it right. But neither does this, taking away a huge, important part of Italian-American heritage by taking down the statues and changing the name. They're not having it, and neither should you. This is still Columbus Day. And if you want an Indigenous Peoples Day, that could be something else. Always. I will always call this Columbus Day because it's become something more. It's become something more than the man, the explorer. It's become something more than the crimes against humanity, they call it back in the day. Columbus Day, what it means now is a huge part of contributions to this country's formation from Italian Americans. We should never, ever take that away from them, and I never will. This will always be Columbus Day. Incredibly awesome, proud community in this country. Good for you, and happy Columbus Day to you. Or, in the words of one of America's finest Italian Americans, let's get an explanation of Columbus Day from one Tony Soprano.
Well, like it took guts to murder people and put them in chains.
He was a victim of his time.
Who cares? It's what he did.
He discovered America is what he did. He was a brave Italian explorer, and in this house, Christopher Columbus is a hero. End of story.
When did that air? Like 2007, 2006? This argument's been going on forever. But it's Columbus Day, and happy Columbus Day. We're into the work week. We're into the week. Enjoy it. If you have the day off today, enjoy that as well. Thanks for following along with me. I appreciate it so much. Just look for Wicked Radio with Bill Adams. It lives as a post on here on X and on YouTube, and the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And expanding even more. Thanks for sharing it along. I really appreciate that so much. All right, I'm out of here. I'm out of material, but we will talk to you tomorrow. Who knows what the news is going to bring us? But more importantly, happy Columbus Day. And more important than that, don't ever take any crap from anybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.